Hello, everyone, and welcome to Q's Views. And here we have the next in our monster book series. We have the Warcraft, the role playing game, Manual of Monsters. Now, this was done through Sword and Sorcery, but this was actually a fantasy source book for edition 3.5 role playing. So, this book was indeed made and calibrated to be used for third edition or 3.5 edition campaigns, which is why I'm going to include it in this series. Not only that though, but this monster book series isn't just including Dungeons and Dragons books, but all the monster books from various table and D20 style RPG games across all the games I own. However, this one was indeed usable, as it says, for 3.5 edition. So we're going to include it in this section. Right when you first open it up, you get this very beautiful double piece of artwork here. Warcraft, the role-playing game, Manual of Monsters. I don't know how many of you play Dungeons and Dragons and have played World of Warcraft. But if you do, let me know in the comments section down below. Here we have the table of contents. And also, too, have you used this book? Do you own this book? Have you included any of these creatures in a campaign? Or have you played this as its own game, as a World of Warcraft game, but adapted for the table instead? I'll go ahead and read this real quick. This is the foreword and the introduction. I think this foreword is pretty cool, which is why I'm going to include reading it. As you might imagine, many of us here at Blizzard have been playing D&D and other paper and pencil games since we were old enough to get shot down by girls. Armed only with funny dice, a fistful of number 2 pencils, and our raw imaginations, we set out to be heroes, explorers, kings. Whether we were facing down mighty dragons of Krynn, getting stranded somewhere in the endless fiends of Faerun, trying to keep our wits about us in Castle Ravenloft, or boldly challenging the unknown in worlds of our own making, our collective love for fantasy role-playing has been with us from the very start. We've been developing the Warcraft series for the past 10 years or so. Frankly, it feels like it's been in dog years, and it's been truly amazing experience to build a rich fantasy setting from the ground up. I guess the countless hours we spent thumbing through our old rag DMGs and players' handbooks paid off after all. Though developing the world of Azeroth has been tremendously rewarding on a creative front, seeing it made into an official Dungeons & Dragons product, Dungeons & Dragons Warcraft, the role-playing game, in fact, has been downright monumental for all of us. The book you hold in your hands builds upon the D&D Warcraft RPG. It is full of the strange yet wondrous creatures that populate the world of Warcraft. In many ways, this Manual of Monsters is like a time capsule for 10 years worth of ongoing world development. Looking back over much of this artwork, an old phrase comes to mind: the more things change, the more they stay the same. Damn straight they do. Fat two-handed ogres, wiry trolls with bright mohawks, hooded spell-casting death knights. These guys immediately remind me of developing Warcraft 2 8 years ago. That was an amazing time for us creatively, although it took a few years. Introducing the new generation of creatures with Warcraft 3 proved to be just as exciting. Lion-faced, furry wyverns, centaur-like dragon spawns, ill-tempered quillboar, and serpentine naga. They all rolled onto the scene and quickly dominated Warcraft's new visual landscape. Still, with every new batch of creatures we introduced, we held firm to the classic fantasy archetypes such as gnolls, kobolds, harpies, and hydras, among others, that we all grew up with. We've always felt that there is a precious balance between the classic motifs that define contemporary fantasy and the higher concept ideas that keep the settings we love fresh and distinct from one another. It's the merging of the new and old schools in fantasy that makes it such a an engaging medium for us as developers, designers, and especially players. We sincerely hope you enjoy Manual of Monsters and use its creatures to fuel as many adventures as you can imagine. Alright, enough about the monsters already. Go and get them. Grab your dice, get out there, and give them hell. Good hunting, y'all. Chris Menson, Creative Director, Blizzard Entertainment, 7703. So, July 7th of 2003 is when this foreword was written. Pretty cool. Chapter 1, Creatures of Azeroth. Alright, as with the previous books, I'm not going to go through every creature specifically, but I am going to kind of flip through this and we can take a look at the creatures and kind of discuss some of them as we go through. If there's any particular creature that you're particularly interested in or fond of, or something you've actually used in a campaign, let me know in the comment section down below. Now, one thing I do want to point out is that all of the artwork in this book is black and white, and I personally don't have a problem with any of that. Here's the Janai. Here we have the Black Dragonflight. Some pretty familiar creatures in here if you're used to playing World of Warcraft. But while all the artwork in this particular book is done in black and white, I actually think it looks really good. I think the artist did a really, really good job with all of it. So, and I even like the stat block design and the way the information is kind of presented. For me, it's easy to find. It's easy to differentiate what goes to what, and it makes sense. And I found that, of course, it's quite adaptable, not only for 3rd edition, but any edition. I think any creatures should be adaptable to any kind of campaign, furbolgs or classics, any style. Another pretty cool piece of artwork there. And of course, what game this style, D&D or Warcraft, would be complete without giants? Of course, gnolls, classic as it gets. Of course, many of us who have spent a lot of time in the World of Warcraft know all about gnolls. Harpies. There's a quest line in the Alliance area where trying to remember the name of the zone. Oh, the wetlands. In the wetlands, there's a pretty extensive quest line revolved around gnolls, and all these different types of gnolls that you got to go take out. Magnetars, those are crazy. If any of you have played World of Warcraft and you know what I'm talking about, if you played Alliance side, let me know that in the comment section below. And if you're familiar with the wetlands and that section on the opposite end of where the harbor is, Menethil Harbor, when you first come into the wetlands, there's a whole quest chain revolving the gnolls over there. Of course, we know the Nerubians, the bug people. Also, too, just because I got to throw this out there, if you do play Warcraft or World of Warcraft, any of those games, how much time have you spent in those games? What character do you main in the video game in World of Warcraft if you play that? What is your favorite aspect of Warcraft? And did you prefer Warcraft 2 or Warcraft 3? Here we have the Pandaren. See, now for me, this kind of settles the argument, because there were a lot of people trying to say that the Pandaren were basically a copy of Kung Fu Panda. And what I tried to say is, no, actually, the Pandaren were invented long before Kung Fu Panda. So if anybody's ripping off anybody, it would be Kung Fu Panda ripping off Warcraft. If you know the lore, and you know when this stuff came out, you know that Kung Fu Panda came out a long time after the Pandarans were included in Warcraft. There we go. Now, of course, I have to ask the most and very important question. Alliance or the Horde? Now, I play both sides. I know, I'm a traitor to everyone, right? However, I am Horde. I am my mains and my best, my best playing time and the funnest times I have been on Horde side, and that's where I do most of the main content is via the Horde side. However, because I believe if you only play Horde, you'll miss roughly half of the game's, potential content to experience. I do have a few high-level Alliance characters, just because, one, I like to see a change of scenery from time to time. I don't like seeing the same stuff over and over. And it's also fun to level some different types of characters, see some different towns, see how the other half lives, so to speak, see if the grass truly is greener on the other side, but also, too, the storylines. You get to see the storylines from a different perspective. And I like seeing the complete, kind of like the complete story versus only one side of it. But at the end of the day, for the Horde, or Loktar Ogar. Some of you will know what I'm saying by that. Or the one many of us have heard, one of my most annoying ones I've heard in the game, and that is Remember the Sunwell. I got so sick of hearing that. Remember the Sunwell. Of course, those of you who play Warcraft or World of Warcraft will know what I'm talking about. The Tuskar are pretty cool. I've always liked those. Wendigo, that's also a creature from Dungeons and Dragons, but of course, we know the creatures in Warcraft, many of them, are similar to their D&D counterparts, but also a lot of them have been adapted to be their own thing at the same time. And here we get into Chapter 2, the Burning Legion, and of course many of us are big fans of the Burning Crusade, and here we have Illidan Stormrage, one of the, in my opinion, the most archetypical and most memorable villains of all time in the World of Warcraft. And here we have the various demonic subtypes: Withering Blight, Doom Guards, Dreadlord, Nathrazim. It's cool that we get some stats for some very cool characters and higher level bosses, like the Iridar Warlock. Here we have Felguards, different creatures and boss type characters. Fellstalkers, of course, those are not bosses, but you know what I mean by that. Fellstalkers, the Fell Hunters. Those are always interesting to fight. Infernals, Pit Lords, which is kind of the same thing as a Pit Fiend. Tainted. There's some really good information and a lot of different variables and options you can use and include, not just in a World of Warcraft or a Warcraft campaign if you want to run it as a standalone game separate from Dungeons and Dragons, but also something you can incorporate into Dungeons and Dragons. Now, as a trivial question, because I don't want to give it away and I want to kind of test your knowledge, the viewers. Who became the Lich King after Arthas, and how did they come to power? Now, in the most recent expansion, which is the Battle for Azeroth, something took place with the new Lich King. What happened to the new Lich King? Who else was involved? All right, different undead types, different templates that you can use. All kinds of really great information. Warcraft on the ethereal plane. Just a lot of great information. And again, once, even though all the artwork in this book, except for the opening the cover, is all black and white, I think they did a really amazing job, and I'm actually quite impressed, not only with the artwork, but the layout, just the composition as a whole. Skeletal mage, skeletal warriors. Just some great stuff. Other monsters of the Scourge. I want to jump too far ahead. Dire gargoyles, that's pretty cool. Different attacks and abilities. And now we'll move into the Appendix 1, 2, and 3. Animals and Vermin, Villains of Warcraft, and Other Monsters in Warcraft. And here we have a pretty cool picture. So just your basic style monsters and creatures. All of your basic wandering monsters. That many of us are quite familiar with. Anybody who's played the game for any significant amount of time will be familiar with many of these. Here we have Asgalore, Illidan Stormrage, Prince Kael'thas Sunstrider. Pretty cool artwork. Kel'Thuzad. Of course, many of us are familiar with this as well. The Lich King, Sylvanas Windrunner. Some of this is kind of a giveaway to some of the things I've said earlier. I won't pinpoint what though. Lady Vash, Other Monsters. Let's kind of briefly go through this. They're just kind of listed here. Different creatures such as blights and fatlings, different types of dragons, manticoras, different hags. Of course, my favorite, monsters ranked by challenge rating, some legal information, credits, pretty cool stuff, some cool pictures, and of course, the end of the book. Now, something I want to point out in this particular one that says World of Warcraft. For generations, mighty warriors have heeded your command and battled for control on Vazaroth. Now it's your turn. Descend into the world of Warcraft and join thousands of adventurers in an online world of myth, magic, and legendary chaos. Your definition of epic adventure is about to be shattered. Now look at this. Coming soon. This is before World of Warcraft actually launched. There were people playing World of Warcraft at this time, but they were playing in the beta. The actual game had not officially launched. How many of you remember that? And here's the closing artwork, same as the artwork at the beginning of the book. All right. Here be dragons and demons and liches. Manual of Monsters is an essential source book for Dungeons & Dragons, Warcraft, the role-playing game, which translates the hugely successful Warcraft computer game series into a pen and paper role-playing game, world-based on the popular D20 rules. From the 5 dragon flights to the merciless Burning Legion and more, this manual contains scores of monsters that may be friend or foe. Requires the use of the Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook Edition 3.5, published by Wizards of the Coast. Designed with the extensive input from the creative minds behind the Warcraft computer games, the Manual of Monsters includes new Warcraft-specific monsters such as the Naga and the Magnetar, the forces of the demonic Burning Legion and the Undead Scourge, how to adapt other D20 monsters for use in the Warcraft RPG. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you for everyone who's watched. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your time. I wish you all well. Take care. Be safe out there. We'll see you in the next series. Take care, everyone.